I'll call the meeting to order. The January 17th meeting of the Richland County Board. And Mr. Kalish, would you please take the roll?
Carroll,
Here.
Murphy Lopez, Brewer,
Here.
Seep, McKee, Renish, Luck, Manning, Gotcho, Glassburner,
Here.
Rudersdorf,
Here.
Gentis, Turk, Cosgrove, Frank.
I am
Frank?
here. I'm here.
Severson. Thank you. Severson,
Severson's present.
Williamson,
Present.
Cooey,
Here.
Fleming,
Here.
Voice,
Here.
McGuire. 19 of 21, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And joining us tonight is Jonathan Young, pastor of the Church of the Nazarene. He will lead us in prayer. If you'd please stand.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and this opportunity to gather tonight. We thank you for your goodness and your grace that has been bestowed upon each one of us through the air that we breathe, the relationships that we have with you and with one another. We thank you for the love that you have shown to us and to our county. And Father, we just pray your blessing and favor might rest on our county tonight. And in the days ahead, in this new year that we've started, Father, both financially, with its people, its businesses, its leadership. And Lord, I pray your blessing and favor would rest upon these leaders that are represented here tonight. I ask that you would give them wisdom. I pray that you would just open their minds as they discuss the matters on the agenda, the matters at hand tonight, that you would guide the discussion, that you would guide their thoughts. May there be civility and respect and love shown by all. Father, again, we thank you for your presence here tonight, and we trust you in all things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. And Mr. Kalish, please lead us in the pledge. Thank you. We have a 22-point agenda tonight. I'm going to make a couple changes. I will move item 21, correspondence. And you can move that right behind number 17 before the closed session. We'll have the closed session last thing on the agenda other than adjournment. And I would like to, where is that one?
Can't hear.
All right, well, okay, we'll just leave. I see it's number 10, our recognition and resolution of condolence to former board member Gaylord Dietz. But we'll leave it where it is. You guys can enjoy the meeting up to that point. And then stay for the whole meeting if you want to, so. Okay. So I need a motion to approve this agenda. Mr. Mannion, seconded by Mr. McKee. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We have an agenda. Number 5, approval of the minutes of the December 13th meeting. Does anyone have any changes, corrections, problems with the meeting minutes as published? If not, I'm going to declare those approved as published. And we will move down then to number 6, an ordinance relating to a parcel belonging to Jeff and Pam Neagle in the town of Marshall. Mr. Bindle.
I think you want the clerk to read the ordinance and number it.
Yes, of course.
This will be ordinance number 23-1, that the following described 4.79 acre parcel belonging to Jeff and Pam Neagle in the town of Marshall is hereby rezoned from Ag and Residential District to the General Ag and Forestry District. This ordinance shall be effective on January 17th of 2023 and is being offered to you by the Land and Zoning Standing Committee on January 3rd of 2023.
And thank you. And what's your pleasure out here? Can we get it before the body? Thank you, Mrs. Gentis, seconded by Mr. Williamson. And now we'll ask for Mr. Bendel to give us a
The background on this part, application is that the property was actually rezoned many years ago, and the new purchaser has land around it and is adding it to his existing land and wants to rezone it back from ag residential back to ag forestry.
Thank you. So a little change in zoning. Anyone have any questions of Mr. Bindle? All those in favor of the ordinance signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ordinance is adopted. Number 7, an ordinance relating to a parcel belonging to Joseph and Gwyneth Pyfron in the town of Westford. Mr. Kalish.
This will be resolution number 20, or ordinance 23-2, that the following described 5.01 acre parcel belonging to Joseph and Gwyneth Pyfron and in the town of Westford is hereby rezoned from General Ag and Forestry District to the Ag and Residential District. The ordinance shall be effective January 17th of 2023 and is again offered to you by the Land and Zoning Standing Committee on, back in October 3rd of 2022, actually.
Do I have a motion to bring this forward? Mr. Turk, seconded by Mr. McKee. Mr. Bindle, background?
Background on this is that there is an existing house on the parcel that is being split off, and they're separating the house from the rest of the agricultural land for a family member.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Sieb.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Mendel. Is there a residence on the property?
Yes, there is.
There's a house on the property. And so it's being split off for what purpose?
For the daughter to purchase and live in.
Oh, for rebuilding?
If there's a house already on the property, they don't need to rebuild it.
All right, thank you. Isn't there a requirement for 2 acres for a septic?
This is a 5 acre parcel that they're splitting off.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
This is 5 acres that they're splitting off.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Okay, any other comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the ordinance signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance is adopted. Mr. Bindle, do you have any petitions for zoning amendments received since the last county board session?
None.
Do you have any rezoning petitions recommended for denial by the Zoning and Land Information
None.
Committee?
None.
Thank you. This does bring us to number 10, a resolution of condolence to the family of Gaylord Lee Dietz. And I think I'll read this myself. So you can stand easy there, Mr. Kalish. A resolution of condolence to the family of Gaylord Dietz. Whereas Gaylord Dietz passed away on November 30th, 2022, leaving his wife, 2 children, and 4 grandchildren to survive him. And whereas Gaylord Dietz served as a county board supervisor for 24 years for District 2 between the years 1992 and 2016. And whereas Gaylord Dietz also graduated from Richland Teachers College, served in the Air Force, served as postmaster of Bloom City, and was a school bus owner and operator for the Richland School District. Whereas the County Board of Supervisors desires to express its sympathy to his surviving family, now be it therefore resolved that the County Board expresses our sincere sympathy. His wife, Elda Dietz, and children Beverly Lau and Cheryl Nagel, and his grandchildren, and be it further resolved that the county clerk is directed to send a copy of the resolution to Gaylord Dietz' wife and children. And I will comment that I knew Mr. Dietz. He became a friend and a mentor on the county board. I think it was about his last 2 years were my first 2 years. And his advice at that time was, Marty, you can't learn everything overnight. Take it as it comes. You'll learn it eventually. And don't try to rush into things before you fully understand them. And that advice has served me well during my time on the board. So I would like a motion to approve this resolution.
I move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Seeb, seconded by Mr. McGuire.
Mr. Chair, if I might just make a brief comment.
Yes, you may, Mr. D.
I
Mr.
had
Seeb.
the pleasure and privilege of being a fellow board member with Gaylord for a number of years before he retired and then went into the nursing home. The one word that I always think of with Gaylord is this: gentleman. He was always a perfect gentleman. He was very kind and gracious, and he understood the meaning of civility. I do not recall many or any controversies, though he had the principle to say no based upon his feeling of what was right and wrong in his own mind. But he did it with respect and civility for his fellow board members and for the citizenry at large. He was a true gem of democracy, and I will miss him, as many of us will. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll call for a vote on this resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and I will call Elda, Cheryl, and Bev, if you would please come forward to this corner. We'll make an official presentation. Mr. Kalish, join me. So, okay, family of Mr. Dietz, you're welcome to stay, or you can go and watch Oak Island if you want to, so. Okay. Number 11, the resolution of the Richland County Board against exercising the referendum option in 2023 to increase the county tax levy in 2024. Mr. Kalish.
This will be resolution number 23-2. Now therefore be it resolved, the County Board of Supervisors declines to approve a referendum question for the April 2023 ballot for the 2024 budget year. And be it further resolved, current service levels in the areas of sheriff, register and probate, Simon's Recreation, family court, treatment court, emergency management, mental health therapy, coroner, UW Extension, veterans, and nutrition program shall be maintained by shifting specified operating expenses in the Highway, Health and Human Services, and Administration Departments to the short-term borrowing levy. And be it further resolved, the Richland County Board of Supervisors adopts the 5-year financial plan as an official planning document of Richland County government, which should be used collaboratively by committees and departments to increase revenues, decrease expenses, and balance budgets. And be it further resolved, the Public Safety Standing Committee shall be tasked with developing a referendum question for the April 2024 ballot for the 2025 fiscal year regarding the separation of the dispatch center from the jail. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective upon its passage and publication. This is being offered to you by the Finance and Personnel Standing Committee on January 3 of 2023.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. McKee, seconded by Mr. Williamson. I will probably call on Vice Chairman Murphy Lopez to give us background. I will call on him. I won't probably, I will call him.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. If folks want to go to the document 11A, final referendum reports in your folders, and I will get ready to drive here on the laptop. So I think I'll just try to hit the high points. I did not prepare any remarks, but I think I'll just walk through the portions of the report that I think might be the most relevant if you haven't had time to read this ahead of time. So there was a 7-member referendum ad hoc committee that the county board formed last July. So that was Supervisor Caro, Mayor Coppernall from the City of Richland Center, Supervisor Frank, Supervisor Severson, Supervisor Turk, and then Mr. Unbehan, who's the Richland School District Board President. And we met about 10 times over the process since last summer. So the executive summary on page 3, that's probably, if you don't read anything else, if you read that, that would be probably the most important thing. We are recommending against a referendum question on the April ballot, in large part because we can raise taxes to keep up with expenses by shifting certain operating expenses to the debt levy. And that does not require approval by voters. Now, that carries us for a few years and actually gives us more stability than we've had in a long time, at least until 2027. So the decision against recommending a ballot question, we did a lot of research, we did a lot of communication. I know a lot of you are aware of that. We issued that survey in December of the county board, and thank you, everyone took the survey and returned it, and it was very helpful to see where people were at individually and as a collective body. The 3 main recommendations, as Clerk Kalish already read, the first one I won't reread. The second one is, this is that planning document that Mr. Langrecht has started working on about a year ago, I believe it was, and we spent quite a bit of time looking at this. It's a very detailed document, but if you want to know if anything is included or not included in the future plans for this budget year in 2023 or future years, you should go to that document and refer to it. It's about 10 pages long. And then this last question about this potential referendum question for the Public Safety Standing Committee to look into the possibility. This came largely from Forest County, which did a similar referendum 3 years ago, and it did pass in Forest County, and it was to add, I believe in that county, 6 staff in their sheriff's department. And what that did is it separated jailers from dispatchers. So right now we have 1 of each, and it gave them 2 jailers at all times and a separate dispatch staff. So that's the executive summary. The county board resolutions on pages 4 and 5. And then we describe what are the restrictions from the state of Wisconsin at the bottom of page 5. As far as operating levy, that can't go up at a rate faster than net new construction. That's about 1% a year. So if we want to keep up with wages, health insurance, other costs at the county, we really can't. It's just not possible unless we hold all that to 1%, and that's generally not a reality for us. The second law, which is described here, says that we can raise the debt levy at the rate we choose. It just has to stay below 5% of all value of property in the county. So on the top of page 6, you can see what we've done over the past 8 or so years with the levy. The operational levy is in blue. It's stayed relatively flat because of those levy limits. The orange, that's our debt levy. That's gone up because of the building of the nursing home. That levy went up between 17 and 18. And then between 20 and 21, that's when we started this idea of short-term borrowing, shifting operating expenses to the debt levy in order to give raises and fund other priorities and keep up with health insurance and other rising costs that it takes to run a county government. That was also the year we did a 5-year note to start a capital improvement program. So that's why there was such a big jump there. So on page 7, it talks about how we recommended, how we made this recommendation, how we developed it rather. So we did a lot of research. There was a press release that went out at the beginning of the process, and then the research had to do with what the county's budget looked like. Answers to frequently asked questions. So we would hear from one committee or one group or one person from the public or several people from the public. They'd say, well, what about the HHS department? What about Pine Valley? The highway department, the campus, what about the county's debt? So we just started taking all those ideas and then we started researching it and putting it in charts, and it's all in a report that is attached to this report as an appendix. We did comparisons to other counties. You might remember the discussion we had last summer about, well, what do our wages look like? What do our staffing levels look like compared to other similar counties? So that research is included. On page 8, the communication we had with the standing committees and with the 2 joint bodies with the city, there's some description of that included. And then there was a process of identifying reductions to the property tax levy by 2027 that the committees went through. Each committee got an identified dollar amount, and in orange is shown the amounts that the committee came forward with as reductions. They are called voluntary reductions right now, but Supervisor Frank is going to speak to this evening proposing a change in that language. But in orange, that's what those are. In blue, those are the remaining gaps that we had to fill. And then at the bottom of page 9, this is the start of the county board survey. We asked folks, how comfortable are you with, or rather, what % increase or change in the tax levy are you comfortable with on an annual basis? And then we showed you how much additional money that would generate compared to what we needed above. So the average was 4.5%, and that's shown at the top of page 10. So our tax levy right now is 10.5 million. If you increase that 4.5% each year, that would be a $2 million increase, resulting in a $12.5 million tax levy by 2027. We asked folks how to prioritize these things where we needed to make additional reductions still, and that was done. On the top of page 11, that's where the results are. And then we also asked folks how comfortable they are shifting certain expenses from the operating levy to the tax levy. And that's shown on the bottom of page 11. And then on page 12, this is basically the budget solution that is recommended. I guess you could call this a budget repair bill, kind of like they do at the state level. And I think this is what we're recommending, and this is what we'd like to hear feedback on. So we have a plan to keep up with rising costs by increasing the tax levy starting in 2024 by 3.9%. That would be a $420,000 increase. In 2025, it would be a 3.7% increase. And in 2026, it would go up to 7.3%. And in 2027, it would be 0.9%. By 2027, we've reached the maximum amount of what we believe we can shift from the operating expenses to the debt levy. And so at that point, new solutions have to be generated. And at the bottom of page 12, there are several ideas about how that could be achieved by that point. And there's a small section on the future referendum for Richland County. And then at the bottom of page 13, these are the appendices. So this is a 65-page report. We just went through 13 pages, but there's a lot more information. All of those are labeled with page numbers that correspond to each appendix. So Appendix B starts at B1, B2, B3, and so on. Appendix C is C1, C2. So you can go through those and refer to each of those documents that that I just went over. So I think with that, I just want to stop, and
I'd like to add some comments now, Sean. What this resolution is asking is for us to approve the 5-year plan. And in Sean's summary, he talked about the increase each year resulting in the final increase. But each year, that tax increase or the borrowing increase will have to be voted on. Okay, each year. So if we approve this tonight, it doesn't mean that we're automatically increasing taxes each year. There's a plan here to do it and balance the budget. But we can't go ahead and talk about 2024, 2025, 2026 until those opportunities come up. Is that accurate? Yeah. So
totally accurate.
So what we're voting on here is the resolution to not do the referendum, but to approve the 5-year financial plan. Any other questions and or comments?
Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Seek.
I would move for approval, and I would like to offer comments after second in support of this.
Okay. Mr. Seek moves for approval. Do we have a second? Mr. McGuire?
I was gonna ask the question.
Okay. You don't want to second
You
it?
need a second first, right?
Yeah, I'd like a second. Yeah. Yes, I need a second. Mr. McKee seconds. Okay. Mr. McGuire, go ahead.
I noticed, and this is just for a reference sake here, but I see the biggest increases in the year 2026. But you say we do have to, but we also, even though we have to approve each year, we also need this for terms and planning. Correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm curious why there's such a big increase in 2026. Can you just kind of break that down? So
It's because ARPA money runs out. So we're using ARPA money in 2023 and 2024 and 2025. So the big increase in 26 is because the ARPA money ran out in 2025 in the plan.
okay, that makes sense.
American Rescue Plan
Okay.
money.
All right, I have a second question too.
Go ahead.
And I'm interested in this, to kind of put it in layman's terms, if you can, we may have to sheriff to buy into this here, but my question is about the dispatch center. I don't know what it looks like just right now. And maybe a lot of people are confused by what it looks like just right now, as far as operationally speaking, and what it would look like in the future. So can you kind of explain that, or maybe we'll have to ask Clay to help us out there.
Well, I'll call on Sheriff Porter if he's so obliged. Thank you.
So for those of you that aren't familiar, right now, we're currently operating our dispatch center out of the jail. So it's combined duties with people as jailer dispatchers. You know, if we were to go to referendum and ask to separate, I'm in favor of separating. I think it's a good idea. I'm a little worried about what the cost is going to be to do that. They're two distinctly different skill sets, jailing and dispatching, and a person could easily specialize in either. We're asking them to cover both. So as of right now, we would move the dispatch center. Where we would move it to would remain to be seen. But they definitely could use some more room because they're pretty crammed in there right now. And as MIS can tell you, we're running out of place to put screens for them to work on. So it's a good move. I certainly would be in favor of it, but there's a lot of working components to making that happen. Yeah, the jail inspector, as of right now, how would I want to say this? He allows us to count a dispatcher as a jailer. But in the same breath, he will tell you that if you look up the statutory definitions, a jailer is supposed to be wholly responsible for the inmates in my custody. And so how is somebody who's manning phones and radios wholly responsible for a person in my custody? So, I mean, he is letting us count that person, but also saying, do they really count? So.
The whole issue of the jail and personnel and the whole thing has to be studied, Dan. But this was one obvious thing that can be looked at and possibly something done about.
I'm curious, and if we're not making a change on the dispatch center right now, then why is it even in here? Why is this a subject matter? I'm vitally interested because my daughter was a dispatcher up there for 4 years, and so.
So Sean, can you answer that?
Yeah, I think I can. So previous to this recommendation, the only position the county board has taken is in the strategic plan. And it said something about basically looking at building an entire new public safety facility to solve this problem. So when we reviewed all these other referendums from around the state that counties and cities have done, the public safety referendums do tend to pass in greater numbers than the other types of referendums. We had never seen a referendum, or I was never aware of it. I don't know that anyone else at Richland County was aware that there was a referendum that passed in Forest County that just dealt with this exact problem that we've been hearing about for years. And they were looking at it as, we need 6 new staff members. It's going to cost $400,000 a year. My numbers might be a little off, but somewhere in this ballpark. And they were doing something about remodeling some rooms to make it work for a dispatch center. I don't know if that was wrapped into the referendum or if they funded that. Maybe the county board just voted on that through the debt levy. I don't quite know the details, but just knowing that it's been a problem for so long, I brought it to the referendum committee as a recommendation, and I talked to Supervisor Luck and Sheriff Porter about it beforehand. Would it pass? We don't know. Will they recommend it? We don't know either, but it just seemed like a good thing to pass on to that committee, since that's how they did it in Forest County, their public safety committee. They recommended a referendum. It wasn't a referendum ad hoc committee.
Okay, I think this is a great idea that we're discussing this, because if I was told correctly, we're the only county out of 72 counties that has our jailers, our dispatcher that works inside the jail. And is that true?
Well,
I can answer.
I see Melissa Luck has a
Yeah,
mic
so
back there, the chairman
we're not
of
the
that
only, but
committee.
we're one of very few. We're not the only, but we're one of very few counties in the state.
All right,
We're
okay,
combined.
very good.
Okay,
Okay, I'm glad you're discussing it. That's fine.
well, all right, and we have the resolution before us, and we do have a second. We got us, yeah, but he seconded, didn't you? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions or concerns, Mr. Sieb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the privilege of attending, I believe, 90%, if not all, of the meetings of the Standing Committee on the Referendum. And I have to say that I congratulate, first of all, the chairman for his very good judgment in selecting an outstanding committee and an outstanding vice chair who chaired this referendum committee. No one knows how many hours and how much work, but an immense amount of work was done by this committee in an intelligent, honest way with civil resolutions of any disagreements. And we can be very proud of the product that's been put before us. In the beginning, we thought there was going to be a fire, and it almost seemed like somebody had set off the fire alarm. This product gives us a tool for fire prevention. There is no fire. It should be said that while we can take a breath here and relax, and the citizens of this county can feel confident and comfortable with this decision. Beginning, there was some alarm. Now there should be some confidence in the presentation that's being brought before us and the decision that will probably be made tonight. So it is. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it is with immense gratitude and appreciation for the work that has been done. This is, I've been on this county board since 1912. That's 2012. Excuse me. I am getting up there, however. And I have to say that while this has been a very challenging year, this board has risen to the challenge. This will probably this is probably my best year of all the years since 2012 on this board. And it is largely because of the very commendable, intelligent, dedicated work of all the members of this board. And I particularly commend each and every member of this committee for their work. It was a learning experience for me, and it should be a source of pride for all of us. So I thank you, and I urge the body to adopt this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Seep. Anyone else?
Chair Brewer, this is Frank. Back comment, please.
Yes, Bob?
I apologize. I am fighting some bandwidth issues here. Vice Chair Lopez does have my document if this gets cut off. It was a very eye-opening experience. I do have a couple of recommendations of a few changes. Sean, if you could take it to page, I believe it's page 10, where it talks about some of the agencies did not meet the goals, but they did make reductions. Figure 6 lists the agencies that are identified as not making voluntary reductions. That comment to me tells me that those agencies didn't make reductions. Those agencies did make reductions. The voluntary reductions, they couldn't meet all the goals that we set out. So basically throughout this document in, I believe it's 12 places, the word voluntary comes up. I don't agree that these were voluntary changes that they made. These were changes that the county board set goals and standards to do, and to call them voluntary, I think is kind of misrepresenting it. They made reductions. So my first suggestion on this is going to remove the word voluntary from this document. I just don't think that's an accurate term. And then so on page 10, my other change in that paragraph is, it says only services that provided reductions, but were not able to meet the reduction levels were included in the survey. I think you can see that. You have that brought up there, Sean. Yeah. We're not, and so the original document says only services that have not been identified as voluntary reductions. They did make reductions. They couldn't meet the goals because of certain things. The coroner only has so much to work with. A number of the other agencies, there was only so much to work with, and we dealt with that in the public safety side. So I would like that changed to the phrase, only services that provided reductions, but were not able to meet the reduction levels were included in the survey. And then lastly, underneath figure 6, I believe that's where it says county board members were given this chart to survey their option about how to prioritize services that provided reductions, but were not able to meet the reduction levels. Again, giving credit to those agencies that did make reductions, but were not able to meet what, for some reason, we called voluntary reductions. I hope that makes sense, and I hope you could hear everything I said.
Mr. Frank,
Yes.
why don't you make these recommendations in the form of an amendment?
That is my recommendation for amendment, those changes. Number 1, that we remove the word voluntary from the document. And then I just lost my other screen here. And that we change underneath the figure 6, we change that to county board members were given this chart to survey their option about how to prioritize services that provided reductions but were not able to meet the reduction levels. And then the paragraph above that, where the cursor is flashing, just striking that sentence and adding only services that provided reductions but were not able to meet the reduction levels were included in the survey. And I did send Sean an email of this, so he's got a copy of that if we need to identify those words closer than what I just said.
Okay.
That is my motion.
Okay, I think we can consider this as one amendment, if no one has any objection.
Mr. Chair, I just did a quick search on the word voluntary in the report, and there are many, probably somewhere between 10 and 15 times that word appears. So I wonder if maybe Mr. Frank, it also appears in the resolution, not just the report. So I wonder if maybe Mr. Frank, you want to make an amendment to eliminate the word voluntary throughout the resolution and the report.
Well, Mr. Wendland, I thought the report was part of the resolution. You did not intend it in that manner?
It may be.
Could be.
Mr. Wendell, comment?
We're talking about moving the word report, not the plan.
Go ahead, Corp Counsel.
Mr. Chair, the word report never appears in the resolution. I think they're thinking of the 5-year financial plan, and the word voluntary never appears in the 5-year financial plan, unless maybe I'm wrong about that. But I think that's why I said the resolution and the report, because then that covers everything, because the 5-year financial plan is buried within the report.
Right.
So what I would do if after this was over, if the county board passes this, then I would just go through the report, remove the word voluntary throughout it, and then send it back to the clerk and everyone else who wants the report, so that's corrected.
What he said.
Does that sound reasonable,
Yes,
Supervisor Frank?
yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, but your concern and your, I wouldn't necessarily call it an objection, but your concern is noted. And what you're trying to do is clarify things. And it's appreciated. And I'm sure those folks who were, felt they were being characterized as being non-cooperative, appreciate it as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we don't have any amendment then, but we do have a promise to,
Resolution is being amended?
Don't we not have to vote, get a second and vote on that change
okay,
or not?
Bob, then we have a motion to remove the word voluntary in the resolution proper.
And I'll second the motion to amend if it includes the
Okay.
resolution and the report.
Okay, so are we ready to vote on the amendment then?
Quick question.
Yes, Mr. Seaman.
I assume that, Mr. Mr. Wendell has placed his imprimatur on this?
Yes. He's nodding. You can't see him, but he's nodding.
Thank you.
It's not a word
Okay.
I'm familiar with.
All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Okay, now we have the amended resolution and the report, which deals with a 5-year plan. Yes, Mrs. Glassbrenner.
Hi. If you don't mind, I just have a couple of comments and some questions just to clarify a few things.
Well, go ahead.
Thank you. So I just want to echo, first of all, what Supervisor Seep said in recognizing this committee and their hard work, along with Administrator Langrick. I was not able to watch or attend every meeting, but I have watched a few of them, and I did the last couple, as well as Finance and Personnel, to try to understand this document that's being presented to us tonight. And I know that the amount of work that you guys did was incredible, including all the department heads throughout this process and all the others that have helped prepare for budget. So I just want to recognize and acknowledge that and thank you guys for that. I do have a few clarifying questions. Some of them were answered in the Finance and Personnel meeting, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. And one of the things that I wanted to look at was the figure on page 12, where it actually shows the increases to our short-term borrowing. One of my questions is, and I think you guys answered it, but I want to clarify, the current 1.05 million that we have begun short-term borrowing, I think that was in 2020, where is that represented on this chart?
So on, Mr. Chair, on this chart, it would be in yellow. So that amount appeared in gray in these 2 years right here. So 21 and 22. And then this is all built on the assumption that the county board would be comfortable continuing to borrow that 1.05 million.
Okay. And in my opinion, and again, I haven't been the one putting the work into this, but I think that including it in with the projected debt levy, I just feel like that it should be made more clear where that is, that we already had that amount in short-term borrowing, just to make sure that we're being completely transparent, especially because I think this document is a great document with a ton of information in it, obviously. And it's something that, we should all be familiar with, that we can reference for the public. And I just want to make sure that it's really clear. And so then when we're talking about those extra, the ones in green, I think you guys stated this already, but that is added on top of the 1.05 that we are already currently borrowing. Okay, so then if I'm adding it up correctly, then to me that looks like by 2027, we would be adding an additional beyond that 1.05, like 15.8% to the county portion of property tax. Is that correct? Approximately.
Yes.
Okay. And again, I feel like that just needs to be really clear that we are actually going to be asking for that by 2027, 15.8% increase on our county property tax, which, you know, we had put out a press release saying we were looking at doing a referendum question on this very question of increasing property taxes. And while I appreciate this solution, I believe this is, you know, we need to figure this out for the next couple of years. What we're saying with this 5-year plan is that we're essentially doing that same thing.
Doing what?
We're essentially increasing the property tax.
Yes, we're
without
increasing the
going to
property tax
referendum.
without-
And I just think we need to be clear about that.
Right.
And I also feel, I feel that like it is, you know, there's so much information that you guys have presented and dug up here on our county budget. And it's almost looks like just scratching the surface, you know, of what there is and what we need to do. And so I look at it like, okay, getting us through that 2024. And I know you mentioned, Chair Brewer, that this would have to be voted on every year. But I feel like saying that, okay, we'll pass this for 5 years with this projected, is the intent that we would continue to look at all of these things and prioritize the services and continue to try to make some changes to balance our budget or make cuts or do things where we're not just relying on adding an additional amount to short-term borrowing. And along with that, this is a lot, but Vice Chair Supervisor Murphy said, when we talk about the 1.7 being kind of the cap, you mentioned that is that, I don't think you meant that legally, you just meant that was what we could identify as fitting into capital expenses. Is that correct? Could you clarify that?
Okay, so maybe the first question first.
I'm sorry,
I think
should
there's
slow
two
down.
in there, and I think the first one is about, you know, are we not going to be looking for additional ways to save money over the coming years just because we've done this plan? So if you go to figure 3, on page 9, page 9. This chart that Mr. Frank already talked about, changing that, removing the voluntary word, it's also on this chart. So everything in orange, we would not have been able to come up with a solution of shifting operating expenses to short-term borrowing had these committees and departments not made these reductions and offered them. So I don't know exactly what they total up to, but you know, you look at the two biggest ones, Pine Valley is going to be bringing in an additional $445,000 in revenue by 2027. The Health and Human Services Department is reducing expenses and probably increasing revenue as well, which is a reduction to the levy of 400 grand. So right there, that's 800 grand. Without all these things, we would not have been able to come up with a solution. So there are definitely cuts. There are revenue increases. There are just different projections based on things changing, having different contracts like in the sheriff's department. So we know that we every year are still going to have to have accountability. We're still going to be having to look for ways to increase revenues and decrease expenses. And that's why the 5-year financial plan is recommended as an official planning document, because it takes a lot of what's on this chart and it makes it more official. It says we're saying we're going to do these things. We'll have to make adjustments every year, you know, because we'll have new information always coming in. But I don't think that, oh, now we can just sail off into the sunset and there's no more work to do, you know, until 2027. We still have a lot of work to do, but I think every previous year we've been saying 0% for every department, no change. But what we've worked in now is we've worked in health insurance changes. We've worked in wage increase changes. so that we can plan on those things for these coming years instead of having to have that discussion every year about those more basic things.
So before you answer my second question, to kind of piggyback onto this one, do you foresee this document being, I mean, we've had several documents in the works, right? We have the strategic plan, we've had the capital improvements plan, and do you foresee this plan as being something that's getting looked at regularly, maybe monthly, and updated? And then does it include, because you guys, someone had been working, I think it was Supervisor Luck and yourself, on like mandated versus non-mandated and kind of prioritizing that way. Does this include all of those services? I'll be honest, I did not get through the entire 5-year plan. I tried to look through it, but so I wasn't sure what all that included.
Well, it only includes changes made since the 2022 adopted budget. That's how Mr. Langreck built the 5-year financial plan. So if there was anything changing between 2022 and any future years, that's what was included in the 5-year financial plan.
So then how then do we look at prioritizing services going forward? You know, if they're not all included in there, are we going to continue on kind of that road that we started down at comparing like mandated versus non-mandated and how we prioritize, you know, where we need to focus?
That's what the county board does, but Mr. Seep, I'll call on you. I think you have a response.
Okay.
Yes, I appreciate very much your questions. They're very pointed questions, and I appreciate as well Sean's response. It's my understanding that this isn't a 5-year budget that's fixed. The county will continue, Mr. Lopez, you can, Mr. Murphy Lopez, you can correct me, please. The county will, on an annual basis, go through a budget process, which will, on occasion, quite frequently, I suppose, indicate changes, and perhaps changes in our goals. It does not negate the authority of the county to manage the budget from year to year, and it does not negate the authority of the county to manage staffing levels. This 5-year plan does not guarantee in any way or imply in any way that things are going to stay the same for 5 years. We must continue, in my view, and I think that's my understanding of the plan, we must continue to look for ways to make the county a more efficient economic unit in service to the citizens of the county. Mr. Lopez, tell me if my understanding is incorrect.
No, I think it's correct.
You're spot on, Don. We'll look at it every year. We'll do a budget every year, but this 5-year plan is one way, maybe the best way, that'll get us from here to there.
Thank you for the answer. I guess what I was trying to communicate is that while I support this going forward, it is with the reservation that I don't think that this should necessarily be the end as far as beyond, like, say, 2024 with the plans that you have in the 5-year plan. I don't know that I'm entirely comfortable with saying that that would be the best idea for the next few years after that, what we have here. And so just because we have that solution right now in front of us, I wouldn't want that to be our reason to kind of let up on how we've been really digging into some of these questions over the last few years.
Right. And I agree with that. I think we all agree with that. Mr. Langrick.
Not sure if I'm on. If I can speak to that just on an annual process, each year I am planning on engaging back with departments as we formulate what in a 5-year plan. Maybe I visualize it more as a 5-year financial planning document, a reference point that we can build off of. It's going to allow us the ability to kind of get the direction on which you folks want to go as policy setters, and that's kind of really what I see it as is this is the tentative policy and these are the directions that we're going at. In a process each year, then plan on sitting with each department again and saying now with the new baseline of 2023, what are some of the changes in forecasts that you're seeing out now through 2028? Additions, reductions, changes in revenues, changes in expenditures, all those different types of conversations. At the same time, also having the capital plan projection to gauge that. And then the next step on that then is bringing that forward to finance and personnel. Rules and strategic planning, I think, has a role to play with the capital plans. Those two documents and kind of arriving at what they look like is going to then allow us to do two things. Get an idea of what an award resolution is going to look like for our borrowing component, as well as then putting out our preliminary guidance for apportionments, where we're putting that initial document that goes out to department saying, based on what we're looking at, this is how we would like you to start composing your appropriations request for your preliminary budgets. So then we send those out, we'll get preliminary budgets back, and we're hopefully then passing a authorization resolution for our borrowing, which again, remember that requires a 3/4 vote. And then we're able then with the budgets, if we still have remaining gaps or we have surpluses, then we're working through that with finance and personnel as well, then to arrive at a finalized budget. So there's going to be opportunities through the conversation again to say, you know what, on that 5-year financial planning, we really think that this shifts more towards our priorities. We didn't foresee this. We understand we really need this. And then like other policies, you'd have an opportunity to amend that projection. Does that kind of answer how it can be utilized?
Yeah, yes, I think so. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we've had a resolution before us. We've had discussion. Are you ready to vote on this? No referendum. We're adopting a plan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed? Carrie, did you vote no? Okay. But to my ears, the resolution passed. Thank you.
Was there a no vote?
Yes,
Severson.
there was
One?
one. Okay. Number 12, a resolution adopting amendments to the Richland County Committee structure document. Mr. Kalish.
This will be resolution number 23-3. Now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors, the committee structure document is amended reflecting proposed changes to the name of the Public Safety Standing Committee. Be it further resolved that other changes already approved by the county board are amended into the committee structure document. Be it further resolved that a copy of the most recent committee structure document shall be made available in the Richland County Administrator's office and on the Richland County website. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage and publication. This is being offered to you by the Rules and Strategic Planning Standing Committee on January 5 of 2023.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. McKee?
Second.
Have a second? Mr. Williamson, did you second? Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Wendell.
So since there is already a contemplated amendment to the committee structure document, I wanted to highlight a concern that I had noted specifically in my research of the Education Standing Committee, wherein I discovered that for some reason, the Education Standing Committee bears responsibility for consideration and audit of all claims brought against the county under the Wisconsin dog license law, of which there have been at least 2 in my tenure. So it is relevant. It does come up. In order to bring this in line with any other claim brought against the county, I would propose striking section C sub 2 sub F of the Education Standing Committee document and modifying section G of the Finance and Personnel Standing Committee to read This committee shall consider all claims made against Richland County and shall make a recommendation to the county board as to how to dispose of each such claim. And finally, the insertion in the resolution itself of as a second, be it further resolved, the language that the responsibility for consideration of claims under the dog license law shall be transferred to the Finance and Personnel Standing Committee. And the reason for that is just that there's no reason I'm aware of that the Education Committee should have that responsibility. It makes the most sense for me to be able to bring claims to a single committee. And we've got it cracked open anyway, so I thought this might be an opportunity to change it. If there is support for that amendment, you could move to amend the resolution as read by Corporation Counsel, and that will encapsulate everything I just said.
Okay, I'll offer that as an amendment. Do I have a second? Mr. Manning. Okay, so we have an amended version as read by Corporation Counsel. Are we ready to vote on that?
You need to vote on the amendment.
So, okay, you said it. So, okay. We'll vote on the amendment. Mr. Carroll.
So we're not addressing.
We're simply voting on the amendment to get the dog catcher or dog.
Right, but I'm looking at the committee description. It looks like it's already in the Finance and Personnel under item G.
Yeah, it specifically has a carve out for claims against the dog license law, because in the Education Committee structure entry, that authority is delegated to them.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so getting that language out of education amendment, all those in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the amendment is passed. Now we have the committee structure document itself with this amendment. Does anyone wish to comment on that? Mr. Langrick, did you have any comments, or Mr. Murphy Lopez?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. All those in favor then of the amended committee structure document signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the resolution is adopted. Number 13, a resolution adopting a memorandum of understanding as an attachment to the collective bargaining agreement with the Wisconsin Professional Police Association. Mr. Kalish.
This will be resolution number 23-4. Now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors that the memorandum of understanding dated 29 December 2022 shall be attached to the existing WPPA collective bargaining agreement for the duration of the existing 2022 to 2024 agreement. Be it further resolved that the policy memorandum depicting these changes shall be made available in the Richland County Administrator's Office and the Richland County Sheriff's Office, and notification of these changes shall be distributed to the union members and administrative staff by the Sheriff's Office. Be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective upon union adoption and county board passage and publication, and is being offered to you by Finance and Personnel Standing Committee on January 3rd of 2023.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. McKee, seconded by Mr. Williamson. This is pretty much what we agreed to, isn't it, Mr. Langrick?
Mr. Chair, what you're looking at for the memorandum of understanding, the deviations and the additions, Article 8 vacations would line up their vacation for our WPPA members to match what we had recently approved in our handbook changes for our general employees. Turning over into page 2, you'll see a Scheduled A replacement, and that's kind of a cleanup, ensuring that the where it says A shall be replaced with minimum is how it appears on the wage salary schedule. The progression is also kind of to clear up expectation. You'll see the addition
underneath paragraph C of that, if a cadet was hired from within the sheriff's department, the cadet shall be started at step A upon graduation and in receipt of a copy of a diploma. The employee will progress to 100% pay at step A. So that's a bit of a cleanup. Article 10 with the insurance allows for all benefit type times to be used versus just sick. This comes into play when an employee is out on extended. The benefit time is typically used out of payroll to pay for insurance premiums. So we're able to do that versus having them bring a check in. Article number 18, miscellaneous, is kind of an admin ease, and that's shifting when they're reporting for their reimbursements for their health club membership. And then the exchange is for random drug testing. There'll be adherence to that you'll see on the final page 3. I would defer to Sheriff Porter for questions on how it would impact operations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sheriff Porter.
I don't really foresee any impact to operations regarding these changes. If anybody has any questions further or wants some clarification, I'm happy to provide that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, primarily a cleanup of some of the language and a change, uniformity between that agreement and our current employee situation, the way we handle things. So bringing uniformity to the uniforms. Okay. All those in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have adopted the memorandum of understanding. Number 14, a resolution adopting prioritized strategic plan, tactic, and actions for 2023. Mr. Kalish.
This will be resolution number 23-5. Now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors, the prioritized strategic plan, tactic, and actions for 2023 is recommended by the Richland County Administrator, and the Rules and Strategic Planning Standing Committee are hereby adopted. Be it further resolved, a copy of these prioritized strategic plan, tactic, and actions for 2023 will be made available at the Richland County Administrator's office and on the Richland County website. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective upon its passage and publication. It's being offered to you by the Rules and Strategic Planning Standing Committee on January 5 of 23.
Thank you. You've heard the resolution. Mrs. Gentis makes the motion. Do we have a second? Yes, Julie Fleming. Discussion.
So, Mr. Chair, our tactics and action plan, or our work plan for the strategic plan, is included as document 14A in there. The items that are appearing in green highlight are the ones that have been recommended tonight for prioritization. You'll see other ones that are also marked with gray and strike through. Again, this is the work plan that is put in place to try to reach objectives, quantifiable objectives, to reach the goals of the strategic plan itself. It's laid out to you as a recommendation today in kind of a stratified approach in trying to capture about a third of each strategy, and be working with departments, and the finance and personnel will be working with myself as we're also right now in performance evaluations and setting our annual goals for next year. So I'm visualizing that the finance and personnel will be adopting a lot of these strategic plans and initiatives as primary goals for your administrator going forward into the next session. And then likewise, I'll be adopting these with the department heads that are appointed to me as their priorities. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So, prioritize strategic plan, tactics, and actions for 23. Now, these can change, but these are the plans that we have. And we're asking for approval to proceed. Any more questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, if I could just add a couple comments.
You may.
So the strategic plan is basically a 4-year plan. And so the idea is, how are we going to get the strategic plan done? We're already 1 year in. So how are we going to get it done by the end of year 4? We've taken a third of them for the next year. I think if, like you said, Mr. Chair, things can change, but if the county board adopts this and you really want to say, engage in a joint procurement program this year, and you don't want to wait till 2024, you really need to go to the committee and bring it back to the county board to change the priorities so that Mr. Langreck and the staff and all of us know what are our priorities for the next year. So if you don't like something highlighted in green here and you think it's the wrong priority, now would be a good time to speak up.
And I know, I sense on the part of some, well, we're laying everything out for, well, yes, we are, because our administrator, our chairman of the standing committees you can't get, I mean, I know everybody uses Google Maps now or MapQuest, but in the old days, we used a road map. So you got to have a road map to get where you're going. And this does that. Okay, all those in favor of the prioritized strategic plan tactics signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Number 15, a resolution approving a contract for the Emergency Management Department, Mr. Kalish.
This will be resolution number 23-6. Now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors that authority is hereby granted for two-year contract with John T. Heinen of Richland Center, trading as John T. Heinen Global Consulting, for the purpose of ensuring the department's compliance with federal and state law regarding emergency responses and strategic plans at a cost of $40,730 for the period from January 1 of 2023 to December 31 of 2024. Be it further resolved that the funds to pay for this contract are in the emergency management's account in the 2023 county budget. Be it further resolved that the emergency management director, Darren Gudgeon, is hereby authorized to sign on behalf of the county such contract in accordance with this resolution, which is approved by the emergency management committee. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage and publication. This is being offered to you by the Public Safety Standing Committee on December 18 of 2022.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. Williamson, seconded by Mr. Renish. Any comments? Is Darren on the line? No.
I'm chair of that committee. I can comment if you'd like.
Please.
Just briefly, this is a standing contract that we've had to fulfill part of our emergency management requirements for the state. He handles a lot of the chemical safety plans and other aspects of our emergency management. And that's over, that 40,000 is over 2 years, so it's 20-some thousand a year.
Right. Thank you.
And I am available. I'm sorry I couldn't get the mute button off in time.
All right, I'll call on Director Gudgeon of Emergency Medical Services. Go ahead, Darren. You have a comment?
Yeah, Supervisor Luck explained it pretty well. It's this has been a contract that we've had in place with Mr. Heinen going back to 2017 when there was a decision made not to fill the emergency management assistant. So we went this route instead to save some money within the emergency management budget. So, but I appreciate Supervisor Luck. Her explanation was spot on. Thank you.
Supervisor Severson, do you have a question?
I just was echoing that we've had a contract with Mr. Heinen for quite some time, many years.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we have it. Number 16, a resolution transferring $40,000 from the ambulance service operating fund to the new ambulance fund. Mr. Kalish.
This will be resolution number 23-7. Now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors that approval is hereby granted for transferring $40,000 from the ambulance service fund, Fund 51, to the new ambulance fund, Fund 16. Be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage and publication. This is being offered to you by the Finance and Personnel Standing Committee on January 3rd of 23.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Mr. Williamson, seconded by Mr. Severson. And any comments further that we need to know about this, Darren?
No, this is just our desire the Joint Ambulance Committee's desires to move money out of the operating budget into this account so that we have, can get this built up and be able to use it for things like the purchase of a new ambulance in the future. And then, anything that might come up with the new building that we're in, just being able to maintain operations without needing to ever request money from the county board.
Okay. All right. Any further comments or questions? Otherwise, we'll ask for a vote. So I'm asking for approval to transfer 40,000 from the ambulance service operating fund to the new ambulance fund. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we've passed the resolution. Now, we have a resolution approving provider contracts for 2023 for the Health and Human Services Department. Mr. Kalish.
This will be resolution number 23-8. Now therefore be it resolved by the Richland County Board of Supervisors that approval is hereby granted for the Health and Human Services Board to enter into the following 2023 contracts with A&J Family Homes and Services LLC of Viroqua for $285,000 to provide adult family home services to an individual being served by the Behavioral Health Services Unit, with Family Services of Northeast Wisconsin of Green Bay for $160,000 to provide residential treatment to an individual being served by the Child and Youth Services Unit, with Pleasant Ridge Homes LLC of Viroqua for $150,000 to provide adult family home services to an individual being served by the Behavioral Health Services Unit. Be it further resolved that the Health and Human Services Board is hereby authorized to amend any of the above contracts by not more than 15%. Be it further resolved that the Director of Health and Human Services, Ms. Tricia Clements, is hereby authorized to sign the above contracts on behalf of Richland County in accordance with this resolution, and be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage and publication, and this is being offered to you by the county board members of the Health and Human Services and Veterans Standing Committee on January 12th of 23.
You've heard the resolution. What's your pleasure? Thank you, Mr. Seep. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Who was that?
Rudersdorf.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Mrs. Rudersdorf seconds. Okay, do we have, yes, Mr. Manning, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed AJ and Family Home Services is $285,000. Then you go down to Pleasant Ridge Homes, they read identical as far as what they provide, who they provide for. One's 285,000, one's 150,000. I'm just wondering why the big difference.
Okay. Mr. Severson, do we have, is Trish Clements on the line?
Mr. Chair.
Director Clements, yes,
She
please.
is not online, but I can speak to this.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I don't know the specifics of that, but generally with those differences in cost, it has to do with the level of services that are being provided. That's not spelled out in this contract, but that's typically what is the case. And as far as these three services, they're ones that we have already been contracting with for individuals. It's just that this is the beginning of 2023, so we have to clean this up and get county board approval for these to continue these contracts.
But a good question, Mr. Manning. I do know that, are these more in the services area where these can be counted, or state funds can offset some of this, Ms. Westrenner?
So again, I would have to have Director Clements speak to that to give you all the details, but to my understanding, yes. It's not always, we don't always see it right away, but when they wind up getting all of the state aid by the end of the year, yes.
I do know that Health and Human Services, and it started under the previous director and has continued now. trying to get more of the service providers recognized, I guess.
Oh, you're referring to the CCS
Yes,
program?
yes.
Yes, and that's been ongoing, and we have, yes, definitely increased the number of CCS providers.
Which is a good thing, because then we're looking at state funding
Correct.
to reimburse us, so.
Yes.
Okay, Gary, I don't know if that's a good answer, but it's the only
My
one I
vote
got.
would be
Okay. All right, I'll call for a vote then.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Gentis has a
One of them, it might be that one of them has more facilities than another one. It just depends on what they can offer. It isn't that they're just doing one thing more than another, because not everybody can handle as many people living there as others. So it just depends on the facility.
That's right, and it might be the age or the number of people there. Yes, Mr. Severson.
Also, those numbers for like the 285, 160, and the 150,000, those are up to,
Yeah,
you know,
up
so
to
we
a
may
bit.
only use 40,000 of that. We may only use 80,000 in the one, not the full amount.
Right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Wendell.
Just from the legal perspective, these are often related to court-ordered guardianships. The court order for a guardianship states that in some cases, the ward's income or assets pay towards their care. It could well be that the individual cited in these, one simply has more resources available to offset the county's obligation. That would be another potential explanation for the difference in price.
Thank you. Okay, I'll ask for a vote on these. Everyone in favor of this resolution approving provider contracts signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
2 noes. Okay, thank
Can
you.
we clarify the no's? Was it McGuire and who else?
McGuire and Manning. I
Thank you.
believe. Anyone else? No? Okay, that brings us up to correspondence. Remember, I said that I wanted correspondence to follow number 17. And the reason I wanted that is a guest tonight, Miss Molly Bond from Congressman Derek Van Orten's office has joined us and sat through the entire meeting. So if she wants to give a wave and a hi, and if you want to grab a mic and just say something, since you probably earned the right to do that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I am Molly Bond. I'm a field representative for Congressman Derek Van Orden. So one of my focuses is Richland County. I live in Grant County, so not too far. So I will be around, attend as many board meetings I can, be around in the community as well. So if if Congressman Van Orden can attend an event, I would go in his place. A little update on Congressman Van Orden. He is back in district after the first week of voting for a speaker and rules package. He was they got the committees figured out, so he is the first Wisconsin congressman in 26 years to be appointed to the Ag Committee. He is also going to be on the Transportation Committee as well. So he wasn't able to attend tonight as he has meetings scheduled up in the northern part of our district, but he looks forward to coming to Richland County and spending time with you guys. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Vaughn. All right, why don't we just take care of number 19 then as well. Clint, do you have any appointments to various boards, commissions, and committees? Yes.
I think
Mr.
it's-
McGuire.
I think this is appropriate. I wanted to ask a question here. It would be a strategic question. I don't understand why, and I asked this question because I sat on county board, I sat on school boards and village boards, and we have correspondence, used to have it up in front, right after approved agenda. I don't know why we have correspondence so late in the meeting. And the other thing is, that should be under an advisory, I think we should have an advisory section to our agenda discussion items that we talk about before we actually vote on, into our voting section. And I also believe we should have a public comment. This is very important in across the country. Many people are finding out public comment is the most important part of the meeting. It would be restricted, be a time limit on the discussions, and which we could later determine. But I don't know why we do not have a public comment session to this board, or an advisory session too.
Okay, thank you. I got it.
Okay.
Sounds like something that should go through
But I'm
rules.
not making an amendment, or I mean,
No,
a motion.
I understand. I understand. Anything, Administrator Langrick?
Recommendations for appointments or confirmation of appointments today for the emergency fire wardens in Richland County. This is an annual appointment that we do. Recommendations tonight are for Boaz County Store, Natural Bridge Grocery, Richland County Land Conservation, and the Port.
Okay, Mr. Williamson, seconded by Mr. Severson. All those in favor of these appointments signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we got them. Mr. Turk, you had something that you wanted to discuss under, we'll handle it under, I guess, correspondence, even though we've.
Yes, just to let board members know, it's time for the annual evaluation of our county administrator again. We will be circulating evaluation forms. There are two separate forms that go to board members. There's an overall just evaluation and feedback form, and then there is a form that has all the administrators' goals and objectives laid out and a chance for you to document how well you think the administrator did achieving those and looking at goals for 2023. Those will be distributed electronically by email tomorrow. If you would like a printed copy to do it by hand on paper, I have some here with me. You can also obtain those from Cheryl Dahl in the administrator's office if you want to get it later. We will also be sending the first form out to all department heads and have them complete it. Please return these forms to me by, I believe it's February 6th. It's 3 weeks from tonight, basically. And we'll be compiling those, and the feedback will be going to the Finance and Personnel Standing Committee.
Okay, very important. You did so well on the ad hoc committee's request and response, 21 out of 21. So let's get the same response for this. Pardon? Sure, go ahead, Don, even though it's.
Yes, they're going to be Word documents. You can print them.
Okay. Our next agenda item would be going into closed session. So I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session. Mr. Renish, Mr. Manning.
What are we going to closed session for?
Okay, we're going into closed session to debate or negotiate purchasing public property, the investing of public funds, blah, blah, blah. Basically, the status of the campus, Carrie. I think it's time that we talk about it as a board. Okay. And I want to know what you think before we go much further. So if I can get unanimous consent to go into closed session, we can do so. All those in favor of going into closed session signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, then we are in closed session. Right, so while they're clearing the decks behind me, I'm going to ask for a 5-minute recess. I really need one.
I'm sorry.
Hey, Clint.
I don't have. I can write that fast, so I was like, oh. I think it's. Just remove the word, but I said. I'm gonna remove the word volunteer. Yeah, if it all makes sense. If it doesn't, I'm gonna go back and watch that. What did he say to replace it? Yeah, because I didn't write that. Because he said it twice, I don't know, he said this. No, I wasn't, like, really, my head wasn't really in it, but I'll do it. I didn't know if he sent it to you, like, exactly what I'm gonna say.